So, I want to look at the second movement of Beethoven's First Sonata and kind of how to approach it when you're first learning the notes. Later on, musicality, phrasing, dynamics, balance between the hands, that stuff becomes important, pedaling too. But initially, the biggest challenge is rhythmic. Now, this piece is, in a way, slow. Let's see. So it goes... And the time signature is 3/4. 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It's a very slow pulse. It's interesting, my edition has a metronome marking. Now that's editorial, not Beethoven's, and I think metronome markings should always basically be ignored. What's interesting here, though, is it says 8th note equals 88 for the metronome marking. Notice that says 8th note. So first of all, that means the actual beat of the quarter note is 44, according to that, which is very slow. That's kind of close to the threshold of the slowest beat we can even kind of perceive as humans. The other thing that's interesting is that it implies that if you turn on a metronome, you would set it to 88, which is the 8th note, not the quarter note. So you'd almost feel an 8th note beat, where you feel 6 8th notes per measure. It's not 6/8, because that would be two groups of 3 8th notes. It's 1 2 1 2 1 2 for the 8th notes. So if we set a metronome to that, let's see, like this. It works fine when we're playing slow rhythms like at the beginning. We just have to remember that that's the 8th note that's ticking. Wait. So, it works pretty well. And then 16th notes, since this is the 8th note, would just be twice per click. Dot, 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 dot. So later we get. Like that. And you can kind of figure out how that fits in. So that should get you through the first page or so. Your pages might be different than mine. And then we get, at some point, we come to this octave passages. What? What? Okay, so see that measure, the right hand we have 8th note, da 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 da. So if I feel the 8th note beat, it helps. I just have to remember, like, you have to do a bit of math at first. Actually, the first thing you should probably do is listen to some recordings of this. Will make it way easier if you get it in your ear. But then you do some math here, 8th note, da da, and then you're like, okay, the next thing I have here is 32nd notes. So this is 8th note, da da. So 16th is da 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 da. So 30 seconds is yakadaga, 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 yakadaga. And then I can just look at that measure and think, okay, it has 8th note, 16ths, and, 30 seconds, 16ths. And you can also see how they're beamed together, the like lines that connect the 8th notes and stuff. Those always tell you what's in one beat. That can be really helpful. So this measure is really clean. One of those, one of those, one of those. So it's da da, yakadaga, yakadaga, daga, daga. So it's... so the whole big run of 30 seconds there. But we have those different subdivisions. And then a few measures later, we get this. Again, it helps to do the math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1. So I was counting eighth notes, kind of. But we could even change our counting to include 16th notes. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 and 2 and, or whatever, however. But if I'm thinking 16th notes, that makes this measure easier. 4 16th notes in the quarter note, 1 and 2 and. Then the next grouping is a 16th note that's tied, so that's the next one. And then the and, 2 and is the rest of that. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. Let me do that one again. Look along in your book and see if that or in your sheet music and see if this makes sense to you. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. Whew. And then I get 16th note triplets. So 3 of those fit in 1 eighth note. So I need to go back to thinking eighth notes again. So we get 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Metronome again. So helpful here. That's my eighth notes again. So. Triplets coming up. Okay, and there we get the other really big challenge in this piece, which is triplets in the left hand against 4 notes in the right hand. So triplet 16ths in the left hand, 3s against 4s, the 30 seconds in the right hand. How on earth do you do that? Okay, there's 2 approaches. One is to do it sort of accurately, coming from a slow tempo and counting it out, and the other is to just kind of feel it. I think in this case, feeling it is going to tend to work better. We usually just have like streams of notes. There's no interruptions in the middle of it. It's just running triplets in the right hand and the left hand and in the right hand. Just sits right there. So when we're approaching it at a faster tempo, working with metronome and just understanding how these subdivisions feel against that. So that's an eighth note. So right hand 4 per click. Getting used to that. And even accenting it in the right hand can be really helpful. And then the left hand. And yes, it does feel kind of weird switching back and forth between those because you're changing how you're dividing that time of the beat, whether you're dividing it into 4 equal or into 3 equal parts. But being able to switch between those feelings is super important. So actually doing this, and then the other hand, really helpful, back and forth. And then once you have that down, it's just a matter of doing those at the same time and kind of fudging it, like just making sure the beats each line up and trusting your muscle memory to carry you from one beat to the next, where none of the notes are going to line up because we have 3 and we have 4. And there's no in between, right? There's no common divider of those. So they're not going to line up until the next beat. So left hand was very irregular. I was focusing on my right hand. Let me do the left hand. It's much more likely that those triplets are going to get distorted. So if you focus on keeping on the triplet feel and just trust the 16s. So I said there's another approach. If you want to do this, you can go really slow. Basically what we're doing is we're taking 3 and 4 lowest common denominator is 12. So if I just count to 12, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I could go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And theoretically, if I put that together, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Kind of weird. I'm doing it pretty fast. You do it slower, so you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Just do the math of how it lines up. Really that slow. Figure out a comfortable way to count it for you, and then gradually speed it up. You can get from that to a reasonable. You can get to like that threshold where you're moving from I'm counting and thinking of the beats to I'm just feeling it and processing these rhythms sort of more subconsciously and more with muscle memory. So you can get with counting to that threshold, and then from there you just spend time there until it sort of sinks in and you feel comfortable speeding it up. So that works too. You can move back and forth between those approaches. But that's the other really big challenge here. So we have all these different subdivisions, again, using metronome and just figuring out, this is a good piece to just work on a measure here, a measure there. Just figure out what, if this is my 8th note, what do 16ths, what do 32nds, what do triplets feel like, and how are those all going to fit into the measure? Can I go da 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 da, or whatever it is, because he keeps switching these subdivisions. And I think it's important to have all those beats accurate at first. Later we can add a touch of rubato, and then the whole thing just flows really beautifully. But at first you really have to understand how those rhythms all fit together. Why do I keep like doing that on every word? I think it's because I'm really done with what I wanted to say here. Yeah, again, like I said at the beginning, listening will make all of the other steps in learning it so much easier, listening to recordings, because you'll kind of know what you're aiming for. It's a challenging piece rhythmically, but it's really beautiful. So there we go. That's some information on practicing rhythms. I'm not saying anything meaningful anymore. I'm just going to stop here.